Hey guys, welcome back to the Play on Footy YouTube channel. Today we're going to be doing the review, or the roundup, I should say, of round 14, and what a round it was. Kicking off with the last game of the round, the Giants versus the Power. I did tip the Power to win. Unfortunately, the Giants overcame the Power. But yeah, what a game that was. I think that was a big statement by GWS. The last time they played at NG Stadium, they lost to Western Bulldogs. So I think for them to win at home was really important, especially coming into their next game, which is against the Swans. Massive game of Battle of the Bridges. Personally, for me, I think Houston really stood out with 35 disposals for Port, and for GWS it was Whitfield, who really did lift. I mean, he's had a couple of quiet games throughout the year where he was in particular really shut down by the Sydney Swans sort of forward line and midfield, but for him to get 28 disposals in that game was really good, leading up to obviously the game against Sydney this coming week. So I think that was a big game for the Giants, and as them as a collective trying to find that, obviously that will continue that belief going into what really is the pointy end of the season, which is really good to see. In the next game, it was North versus Pies. Oh my goodness, what a game that was. I mean, to have a 54-point lead for North, to then obviously not able to sort of keep that gap, or at least win, to lose by 1 point. Zach Fisher narrowly just missed his last chance. It was like a snap around the body sort of thing, and then they had a 50-meter penalty which really should have been awarded to North, but wasn't for some reason. So yeah, unfortunately that's just how football is. There's a lot of grey, not very black and white sort of sport. But for me personally, Zerha was fantastic for the Kangaroos. 3 goals, 1. George Wardlaw's another one. 1 goal and 30 disposals. And for Pies, it was Crisp, actually, a goal and 27 disposals as well. Another thing I wanted to mention was, I think it was Will. He was tagging Dacos, and I think it was at the end of beginning of the third quarter, he was subbed out. I think it was, yeah. And I just don't understand that from the coaching staff of North. I just don't really know why, because then Dacos went on and basically got his team on the back of his shoulders, and they basically made something out of nothing. Which is incredible. It's probably, I think it was said I was listening to SEN, it was the 7th best comeback ever of all time. 3rd was the Eagles versus Geelong game in 2006 at Skilled Stadium, where they were down 54 points and came back to win it. So, no, really interesting there. And the next game was the Crows versus the Swans. This one was at Adelaide Oval, and it was a Marty party. I mean, he kicked 9 goals, 1. Unbelievable. 67 to 109. I did tip the Swans, so that's a good one for me. Grundy was outstanding. 2 behind, 31 disposals, but really led in the ruck. I mean, Strawn really isn't up to AFL standard, clearly. Amadi, of course, 9 goals, 1, as I mentioned earlier, and Hinge, 33 disposals. I think those guys were the standouts for this game in particular. But shout out to Heaney as well. He's been fantastic. I mean, he'd be one of the front runners for the Brownlow, 100% at this stage, in my opinion. Chad Warner's another of those guys, but Errol Goulden, they've just got such a fantastic young midfield, which really is going to hold them in good stead for September. There's no way that Swans can't play finals this year, the way they've been tracking. They only had that one doozy game against Richmond. I think it's fantastic. I'm really excited for Sydney Swans. I think their time really has come to make the grand final, and definitely, in my opinion, go all the way. I don't see why they can't this year. Tigers versus the Hawks, that was another game. That was Dusty's 300th. Sicily, 33 disposals. Taranto, a goal and 33 disposals. And Dusty kicked the first goal of the match, which was just fantastic. Yeah, so Tigers 49 to Hawks 97. I tipped the Hawks. But yeah, Hawks are on a fantastic run. They probably don't want to go into a bye this week, given how well they're going. Next game is the Bullies versus the Dockers. I tipped the Dockers in this one, and yeah, Bullies 149 to Dockers 82. It was one of those matches where right up the block, it just didn't look like Dockers were switched on. What I mean by that is that their defensive pressure wasn't there, and I know that the Bullies were trying to actively make sure that Ryan got out of the marking contest, especially because that's where Dockers hurt teams, is from Luke Ryan basically. And he's not a player that finds his own ball. He's very much reliant on the system that they have in place there at Fremantle. So when he was, I guess, shut down in a way, he wasn't obviously tagged, but they were actively trying to placate him, not make sure he wasn't in the vicinity of where the ball was going to be or landing. that really did hurt the Dockers for sure. But the man of the moment for Bullies, the Bont. I mean, he was unwell. There was rumours going around that he wasn't going to play the game. Whatever meds he was on, I want some, because he was on fire. Bont, 3 goals, unbelievable. Tim English, the ruckman, he's had a lot of, I guess, not negative press, but a lot of challenging press put his way in terms of his hunger for the ball. And he kicked 2 goals and he was doing really well. He had Sean Darcy to really deal with, and also Luke Jackson, who I'm not personally sold on the Fremantle 2 ruck situation or the duo. I actually think Luke Jackson solely would do very well. I mean, look at Rowan Marshall. He has had a bit of backup currently with Campbell on the weekend, especially against the Gaming Lions. But I just don't see why they need Darcy as well. He doesn't really add any forward pressure. If they had another Luke Jackson, if Luke Jackson had a twin, absolutely, I'd understand that side of things. But you know, Darcy doesn't really do any forward pressure, so I just don't understand it there. And then Lobb, the dagger in the heart for the Dockers, is ex-Dockers player, an ex-Giants player, Rory Lobb, kicking 3 goals, 1. I mean, his job or career is basic. He's got a, he's on the edge. He's on the edge at the moment, so he really needed to stand up, and he did. And I think that's credit to him. The next game was the Lions versus the Saints. This was the very first game of round 14, so I'm working backwards to the rounds. Lions 126 to Saints 106. This was a shootout. This was an actual shootout in terms of scoreboard, I guess, pressure, if you want to say that. The leading goal kickers for each team were Danaher and Higgins. Each got 5 goals. And Logan Morris, he's a guy that's just sort of not come out of nowhere, but he's just a bit of an unknown sort of name, and he kicked 3 goals. So he's definitely one to watch. I really like his kicking style. I think he's got a really good kick on him, and good pressure as well. He does a fair few tackles for a forward, which is, you know, good to see. But yeah, in terms of the overall game, I think, yeah, as I said, it was a shootout. I think Lions, they needed to win this one at home, of course. But yeah, the Saints season is all but lost, I'd say. I think they're just really, at this stage, probably going to play for a bit of pride, but also play for next year. And I think Ross Lyon, I'm not saying he's tanking. I don't want to ever say that a team's tanking, even though Melbourne back in the day in the early 2000s were guilty of that. But I think if you're Ross Lyon, you've got to get youth, and you've got to get it now before the other team of Tasmania comes in 2028. And whether or not North Melbourne do fold is irrelevant. All I know is that Eddie Maguire, whether or not, you know, you believe what Eddie Maguire says, or Sam McClure or any of those guys, Tom Morris, but he was saying that a lot of the AFL clubs don't want a 19th club, so it's likely one of the clubs will go, and the only one that people are thinking of is North, which would make sense, because I think, you know, you saw it with Sydney back in the day, South Melbourne, they had to move to Sydney. So all these Melbourne clubs have slowly been dissipated or taken out and moved elsewhere. Same thing with Brisbane Lions, Fitzroy. So it's not too far-fetched of a theory. I know a lot of people wouldn't like it. It's probably not a good look for the AFL, but, you know, you've got to keep everyone happy and the competition happy. And there's enough inequality with travel as it is within the competition. So, but anyway, what do you guys reckon? What was your takeaway of round 14? What was your favourite game? What was your standout moment? Yeah, for me, it was the North Pies game by a long shot. Unfortunate that North couldn't get it done, but that's footy. But we'll move on to next week, and I'll do a predictions video next. Cheers, guys.